amigos, and happy Cinco de Mayo. Today I have a wonderful Cinco de Mayo recipe for you all. So, are you ready to enjoy it? Let's go off to the kitchen. Alrighty, in my pan, I have some chicken with a little bit of chicken broth. And to that, I'm going to add an entire can of green chilies. This is the mild or medium. Let's look at that carb count. And for the whole can, it's 1. So it's a 7 carb count for the entire can. Let's go ahead and get all that in there. I'm going to go ahead and give that a good stir. Start getting those chili juices going all over through that chicken for our chicken enchiladas. And I'm going to tell you all a little history on why Cinco de Mayo is so important. A lot of people just think that it is a fun fiesta type day. Well, yes and no. In modern history, yes. Back in the day, no. So, picture it. Mexico, 1861. Your president has declared that this country is basically bankrupt and that it can't pay its debts that it owed to France. Well, that's all well and good. Hang on while I get the cream cheese. Alright, so to my enchilada mixture, I added 3 ounces of cream cheese because I like it a little creamy. So anyway, what I was saying. Mexico had told France that they could not pay their debts because France had helped finance the independence of Mexico. And this was 1861 when they told them, hey, we can't pay the debt back. And Mexico had been free since like the 1820s from Spain. And, you know, the president was like, I'm sorry, I just can't pay the debts. And you wouldn't think that that would have any kind of impact on American culture. However, I will tell you a tale. So, during that time, 1861, if you all remember from history class, America was in the American Revolution. Okay? The North versus the South. Okay? So keep that in the back of your mind. North versus South. That's going on. Well, there was such a thing that was put into place by James Monroe, who was the 3rd president of the United States. It's called the Monroe Doctrine. And it basically said, you know, a shortened version of it was that no outside foreign entity could invade the Western Hemisphere without picking a fight on everybody. Everybody was in it together. Sounds good, right? Well, James Monroe, you know, he was our 3rd president. And during 1861, we had Abraham Lincoln. When Mexico told France, hey, I can't pay you back. I'm sorry. Well, Napoleon III, not Napoleon Bonaparte, but his nephew, Napoleon III was like, that's not going to work for me. So what he did was he got Spain and England to come over to Mexico and be like, we're going to take this. We're just going to take this. And France was kind of like, I'm in charge. And England and Spain were like, nope, we're out. So they went back home, leaving France there to fight the Mexicans. And wouldn't you know it, they march into a little town called Puebla. Okay? This little town, they had basically worked up a militia and some troops of about 4,000 in number. Okay? Against the French. And at the time, France was like the powerhouse, military-wise and naval-wise, over in Europe. So, I mean, you got these 4,000 Mexicans, you know, picture it. It's almost like the Alamo story, but, you know, Mexico versus France. 4,000 Mexicans versus 6,000 trained, armed, oh my gosh, trained, armed French soldiers. Okay? These soldiers were like, we're marching in. We're going to whip these little old Mexicans. Okay? So they march into Puebla. And these Mexicans are like, no, you are on our turf. I'm sorry, you need to leave. 4,000 Mexicans holding off 6,000, military experts, basically. Well, the Mexicans fought with all their heart. And they beat the French. And the French left licking their wounds and embarrassed because the Mexicans beat them. Okay, this little old country that they wanted to take over and colonize, because colonization was a big thing back then. They wanted to take them over. But they lost. And y'all might be wondering, okay, why is Cinco de Mayo, which is a Mexican holiday, it is not Mexican Independence Day, it is just a Mexican holiday, why is that so important to the United States? Well, remember, this all took place in 1861. 1861. Remember what I told you to keep in the back of your mind? Alright, so instead of rice, I'm putting in rice cauliflower. But I'm just putting it in frozen. And then I'll get back to the story. Okay? Alright, it's 1861. We're in the middle of the dadgum Civil War up here in the United States. Okay, we can't go and help the Mexicans, even though, France directly broke the Monroe Doctrine that the United States, Canada, and Mexico had all signed into agreement on. Because it was, the doctrine basically said, you pick a fight with one, you got us all on, we're all coming to the fight. So, America was just a little bit busy at the time, and they couldn't go and help. And because we were in the middle of the Civil War. However, it came out that France was wanting to invade Mexico and go up through Mexico and go into the Southern Confederacy to help fund the Civil War from the South side. Because they were on the South side. In 1861, the Confederates were in the lead, so to speak, of the Civil War. They'd won more battles than the Union. Well, why is that important to the United States? Well, think of it this way. If the Mexicans hadn't done what they did and beaten back the French, we might be in a whole different culture at this point. So, Cinco de Mayo was primarily celebrated in the town of Puebla, where the battle took place, and also in California, because there was a large population of Mexican Americans there. And throughout the past 160 years, it has spread all across the United States. Most people just think it's a day to go eat Mexican food and, have margaritas and drink Corona beer. However, when you know the true history about what Cinco de Mayo was and why it was so important, it gives you a whole new appreciation. So that is why Josh and I are going to enjoy some lovely chicken enchiladas. And remember that the Puebla people helped save our tail. So I'm going to let this simmer, let that cauliflower rice cook down. And that is my chicken enchilada. And we will have this with some tortillas and have like chicken enchilada tortillas tonight. Alrighty, I'll see you later. Alrighty. Now, y'all might be sitting there going, oh, Lord, Tora, you know a lot about Cinco de Mayo. Well, a little bit more story time. So, back when I was in high school, I think it was my senior year. No, it was my junior year of high school. My Spanish teacher had to leave during the middle of the year, and my mom was an educator. She was a substitute teacher at the time. So they asked her, hey, would you like to take over the Spanish class? My mom does not know español. No hablo español. Okay? She doesn't speak Spanish. Okay? In fact, she had to teach three different classes of it. And I was in the last class of the day, and she walks in and she goes, I learned something the last class. And we're like, okay. And she goes, I learned how to greet you all. Olé! And it's like, Mom, it's hola, not ole. No. So that being said, I mean, my mom took over, and I think it was like November, December. So my mom was there for, a good bit of the year as a Spanish teacher. And she would learn the lesson and then have to teach the lesson all in the same day. Anyway, so me, being the wonderful daughter that I am, convinced her that when, the first week of May, that we needed to have a Cinco de Mayo celebration. And my mom's like, well, what is Cinco de Mayo? And I was like, well, it's the 5th of May. And she's like, well, what is it? So we had to do some research on what Cinco de Mayo was and prove our point that we needed to celebrate Cinco de Mayo because, we're in Spanish class. And most of us thought that it was, a Mexican Independence Day, but it's not. It's actually where Mexico stopped the French from invading into the Confederacy and them, paying the Confederacy to kick our tails. So it's still relevant today in a way. So every time Cinco de Mayo comes around, I, think about, convincing my mother that we needed to have a Cinco de Mayo, fiesta in Spanish class, which, my mom actually really enjoyed because she would be like, okay, it's potluck and you all have to cook for me. And I'm going to tell you all this right now. I convinced my mom that we needed to have pina coladas in class. Okay. And I'm going to tell you this. My mama is a teetotaler. She does not drink. She's never drank. And I convinced my mom to buy the stuff to make pina coladas for the Spanish class. However, which pina coladas, all that is coconut milk and pineapples. But what makes them alcoholic is when you add the rum. So instead of actually adding real rum, the rum flavoring that you get by McCormick's or whatever, and you just put a couple drops and it really flavors everything, gives you a rum flavor without the alcohol. Yeah. And I was blending those up, and I'm going to tell you this, it was hilarious because we had the home economic class room. So we had the whole kitchen, and I'm in there blending up pina coladas. The principal walks in and he goes, what are you doing? I said, I'm making pina coladas. You want one? And my mom's standing there going. So he goes, these are better not be alcoholic. And I was like, they're not. They're not. My mom's here. They're not. He drank one and then he goes, okay, so I'm going to monitor you guys. Basically, he really just wanted some free food, which that was fine. My high school principal, he was really cool. We really enjoyed having him in there. So anyway, that is where I actually learned the history of Cinco de Mayo. And I was class of 2004. So it's been 19 years since I graduated, 20 years since Mom taught me in Spanish. So yeah, that was 20 years ago. And I don't exactly remember where all the sources were, but I have one of those memories. You can ask my mama. I have one of those memories. When I learn something, I learn it forever. So anyway, that is a brief summary of Cinco de Mayo, how I learned about Cinco de Mayo, and a recipe for y'all to enjoy. I mean, that was super simple. My chicken I had boiled up earlier in the week, and I need to use it up, so that's why we had chicken enchiladas. I mean, I could have done fajitas and done them with the zero carb tortillas by Mission. We're probably going to put the enchilada stuff in the tortillas. Maybe not roll them up, but just have tacos. But anyway, there you go. That is a history of Cinco de Mayo. How I learned about Cinco de Mayo, a recipe, and even some other ideas for you guys to enjoy. So, you all are beautiful. Or bonitas. That's Spanish for pretty. Okay. And I care for you guys. I really do. I educated you. I gave you a brief history of what Cinco de Mayo is really about. A little more insight on me. And a recipe. And you're not alone when you don't understand why some things are more important. You know, we didn't understand why it was important in America for Cinco de Mayo. It's actually more important to America than what it was to Mexico in the global aspect of it. And you weren't alone if you didn't know the history. Alrighty, be kind to others and be kind to yourself. Okay, I've always heard knowledge is power, and I'm helping to empower you through some knowledge. Alrighty, guys, I am going to go enjoy my enchiladas and celebrate Cinco de Mayo with my hubby. Love ya!